Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day and above all else that you are looking after yourselves and one another. There you go. Thank you, Jim. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic episode to bring you, or we do hope it will be a fantastic episode. We are here for an album discussion. And before I get into the albums we're going to be talking about, I want to welcome back to the channel and the show, Mr. Jim Bricker. How's it going, Jim?
I'm doing very well, Armando. Happy to be back with you and even Ken.
Hmm, interesting. Well, good. Good to know that. Good to know that. Good that you're back. And the one and only Mr. Ken Cheshire. How's it going,
Hey
Ken?
guys, it's good to be back amongst this trio of whatever.
Doom.
Yes.
Doom, yes, that's what I describe myself to people.
Well, there is a trio of Doom. Did you guys not
Okay.
know that?
Yeah. All right. Okay, we'll go with that. Ladies and
All right.
gentlemen,
Okay.
we are here to have an album discussion. We have two albums to talk about. And in terms of musical style, you couldn't be, in my very humble opinion, further apart in music genre in terms of the styles of this album. The first album that we are going to be talking about is from the one and only Pat Metheny. The album is Secret Story. It was released in July of 1992. It was recorded from the fall of 1991 to the winter of 92, released on Geffen Records. The listing for genre, according to the great encyclopedia in the sky, is jazz, jazz fusion, world music, and world fusion. It's a lengthy album. There are 14 tracks. Although in 2007 there was a reissue released with 19 tracks, but for me, I concentrated on the 14 track edition. The album was produced by Pat Metheny, and it has a whopping playing time of 76 minutes and 11 seconds. Now, just a little footnote for me. Not that I'm new to Pat Metheny, I've been listening to Pat Metheny steadily for the past couple of years, and I've been trying to get my hands on the CD for a long time. I finally was able to get a copy. I was only able to find copies that were going for like $50 plus on Amazon through secondary sellers. I was able, through the grace of God or whoever, whatever power above me, I was able to get a copy for as low as 14.99. So when I saw that, I jumped on that puppy like you would not believe, and I grabbed myself a copy of it. Um, like I said, the original pressing has 14 tracks on it. And before I give my opinion on this album, I will pass the word to Mike. Who am I going to pick on first? Let me see. Um, Jim, what are your views on this wonderful album as I see it?
I really would like to go after Ken.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell,
I
this episode is not scripted. Ken,
I
what are
I
your
feel
views?
I feel like it's a trap.
There you go.
No, 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 no fish head Star Wars thing here. It's not a trap.
Yeah, well, okay. I really like this album. I've stated before, as opposed to Jim's opinion, but the album is the album is quite unique to me amongst his catalog for the probably one of the primary reasons he uses a lot of orchestra in this album,
Mhm.
much more so than the others. The overall width of tone and instrumentation and everything is wider than usual, or at least wider than a usual Pat Metheny group album. And there are the only place it doesn't go that's typical for him is into um, uh, the really wild jazz. It's not fusion anymore. It's hard jazz. He doesn't do that here, although he does cut loose on his guitar solos. So it's much more in the lines of a Pat Metheny group album than it is uh, uh, than his just more straight traditional old time jazz, or even the new. I don't even know what would you call it, Jim? The Wilder stuff.
Well, that's kind of like avant-garde,
Okay,
noise to
that's the
to
thing.
some regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, even though 2 albums after this, he did release that one Abomination album. But anyway, we won't
Zero
talk about.
tolerance for silence, or
Yes, yes, yes. We won't talk about that. So, looking at uh, the one thing about the album that I wish you had more information on who's playing on what tracks,
hmm
because I feel that the Wikipedia page, and it's got quite a lengthy list of musicians on this album. It's not entirely clear, um, even though, and because there are some songs that I think by default are crediting Pat Metheny on keyboards that I suspect is a little bit more advanced than what he normally might be able to play. I could be wrong, because Metheny he is a savant, on guitar, and I have no idea how much of a savant he may be on keyboards and even other instruments. Anyway, so again, with the very lush orchestrations on many of these songs, it just adds almost like a film score feel
it does have that quality
to
to it. Yeah.
many of these. Yeah, many of these songs are very cinematic in feeling. I started in my notes. I started to just make a list of what I thought were outstanding tracks. Well, I
Okay.
gave up very soon after that, because it would have been easier to put down to list tracks that, you know, I thought could have been left off, which is
Okay.
only one that I can think of. So it's a very broad album. It's very, very melodic. The It's very lush in sound and chords. A lot of my favorite tracks are the ones in which Lyle Mays is on keyboards.
Yes, it
Uh,
should be noted that amongst just to, not to cut you off, just very
yeah.
briefly, it should be noted that amongst the list of say 1,000 cast of characters that are on this album, two notable um, additions for me are Steve Ferrone on drums,
Mhm.
who would go on to play with Tom Petty, and well-known session drummer, and also Lau Mays on synths and keyboards, and yeah, so
And then you got Steve Rodby,
yeah,
Paul Wertico, a lot of the standard Metheny group musicians,
yeah.
uh, and we got Toots on harmonica on 3 of these albums, which I really enjoy.
hmm
Is it Dielemans? Is that how you pronounce it, Jim?
Spielman, I think.
Dielemans, yeah. Who's an excellent harmonica player. I've
Yeah.
tried playing harmonica, and yeah, no one wants to hear that. Several tracks. You got Will Lee on bass, but anyway, going back to what I was saying, Lyle Mays to me is Lyle Mays and Metheny together. For me, are the Lennon and McCartney of of fusion jazz.
Okay.
I think that I think they bring out the best in one another. I love each of their solo works too, but to me, there's something about that combination between those two. And you can't help but notice the Lyle Mays keyboards both what he's playing and the the synth sounds that Mays uses. It's very it's just it's a fingerprint, and
Hmm.
it's just really really nice. Um, we've got some world music
Hmm.
on this album. We've got some funky stuff on this album that Armando can shake his you know what to.
My
Um,
ass, ladies and gentlemen, he's referring to my ass.
well,
Go
there
on.
goes our rating. Yeah.
Okay.
PG instantly.
Yeah, I know. The and it's got
Guilty.
an amazing opening track that initially I wasn't too wild about, but over the years or even decades since then, um, I've come to really really enjoy it, which goes to show sometimes your first impression is not always what's going to stick with you. So
Hmm.
when you hear something and it's just like give it a few more listens. You might be surprised. For me, there's a lot of music that um, I hear and I initially love, but then it kind of loses its luster after a while. Then there's other stuff that doesn't do anything for me on an initial listen, but the more I listen to it, the more I fall in love with it. And I never get tired of it. I've talked about several albums like that here.
Hmm.
Boy. Yeah, with on the tracks, especially with Rodby and Wertico, strong Matheny group um, vibes on those. You've got playful guitar, guitar and keyboard interplay. You've got complex rhythm patterns.
Hmm.
It's almost every single, uh, to use the word trope, but not in a bad way, but all of the best Mathenyisms of that period.
Yeah.
So, so without going into that, this is it's a lovely album. It really is, and it's Armando talks about taking a trip with music. Um,
I say
this is
that quite a
definitely
bit.
one for me. It would be a fall afternoon with moderate temperatures and being in a hammock and just sitting back and close your eyes and just enjoy the sounds washing over. So that's my general feel for this album. I think it's great.
Nicely put. Mm, nicely put. All right, Jim.
Well, well, well. Um, so right now
Here we go.
in this Northern California afternoon, it's about like 71 degrees, beautiful. I could see how Secret Story would fit this kind of a vibe. It's very much for just something that's placid, comfortable, etc. So I'm right with you on there.
Excuse me, did
This
you say,
album,
sorry, you said flaccid?
no, I said placid, like Lake
Placid.
Oh,
Sorry.
Placid in New
No,
York.
I did
I
not
heard the
hear.
same thing.
Yeah, no. See, ladies and gentlemen, it isn't just me.
Dudes, my
Jen heard the
brothers, come
same thing.
on.
Okay, placid. Got it. My
Placid,
apologies.
placid,
My sincere apologies.
Classic.
I did not mean any disrespect.
placid.
Placid. Carry on.
I don't know if I can now. You've thrown off my groove. Anyway,
Stella got her
this
groove back, so
album,
can you.
there's a lot about this album to like. Unfortunately, I don't really like it. And I will now proceed to tell you why.
Uh-oh.
Um, I would put this album in the category of two other albums that you would think it's like these don't belong together. Tears of Fear, Seeds of Love, Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, and Pat Metheny's Secret Story. I all put in the same category, which is too much, and they're just too long. Now, that doesn't mean it's not good. It just means that I can't really enjoy it as an album, as a unit. Um, and I'm a big Metheny fan. I've been riding this train for 40 years, so I'm on board with what Pat's doing. But for this one, I it's just too much. And I think the reason is too much for me is that there's like a lack of a through line in the entire album. In Pat's albums, whether it's the group or the solo, you've got pretty much one sort of feel that kind of dominates or an arrangement.
A
This
thread.
seems to be kind of the kitchen sink approach, more of an album of a collection of styles and motifs than tunes, at least to me. Stylistically, let's compare this for a sec to The Way Up, which is another long album. It's 68 minutes, but there's a compositional through line that goes throughout the whole thing in terms of repetitions of motifs and themes and recapitulations. And there's also similar arrangements that kind of go throughout as well. It's like one band performing the album as opposed to, this track has a Cambodian choir, and then it's got Toots. Next one has Toots Thielman, and the next one has the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and the next one has, a Japanese, diminutive singer. I mean, it's just everywhere. And I would probably be more apt to enjoy this album if it were split into two, much like I would probably for Physical Graffiti and Seeds of Love. Seeds of Love seems odd because it was one album when it came out, but it's just so dense to me. I can't really enjoy it in all one sitting. I need to
Okay.
kind of hear it in two chunks to kind of get the most out of it. Um, Ken, I get what you're saying about the uniqueness here in terms of like orchestra. Um, I think for me, Pat was more successful in adopting an orchestra with the soundtrack album Map of the World, because again, it's one one general theme, and it kind of floats along through the whole thing. Um, Pat does play keyboards on this album.
Hmm.
He plays bass. He is all over the place. There are only two tunes that have Lyle on piano. Um, but yeah, if you look on Discogs at the CD credits, you'll see everything that Pat is up to on where did it go? On one of the tunes, Pat is credited with all synths, percussion, electric guitar, electric sitar, acoustic guitar, and piano.
So there is sitar. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, he's all over the place. And I think a lot of this album was kind of constructed in the studio, and then he brought in other people to kind of augment it here and there. So
Mhm.
that's it. So it doesn't have kind of that same band feel that a lot of the looser Pat Metheny albums do. And in that sense, it is a lot like the Pat Metheny group, in that it's highly compositionally arranged, but yet there's elements for um, improvisation here and there.
Okay.
Um, I the comment about Pat and Lyle being the Lennon and McCartney, I totally agree when we're talking about composition, production, and arrangement. Um, the Lyle fingerprints that you talk about, I think part of that is kind of, and maybe more Pat's fingerprints, because I think he was the one who said, I want this Oberheim flute sound as part of the Pat Metheny group. And so obviously it becomes associated with Lyle because it's Lyle who's playing it. But even on later things, Pat was sort of adopting that sound with like orchestrion and other things. So he may be more responsible for that flute Oberheim sound that becomes so associated with the Pat Metheny group. Um, as individual tunes, I like a lot of the individual tunes. Finding and Believing, which is the 10-minute epic that's in the first third of the album. Always and
Track
Forever is
four.
a
Yeah.
yeah. Always and Forever is a great ballad. See the World is kind of this upbeat, brass driven tune, which is really good. The very, very short As a Flower Blossoms, I'm Running to You, which is a duet with Akiko Yano, I believe her name is.
Yeah, he wrote that
Um,
with the Kiko. Yeah, 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 no, yeah.
yeah. And then lastly, the tune Antonia, which, is highlighted with accordion and Pat having an accordion patch on his synclavier as well. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful tunes. And so I hate to be such a Debbie Downer about this as an album because I love Matheny and I think there's some great tunes on here. I just think for me personally, it's just it's just too much. It's kind of like, instead of sitting down at a fine meal that's got, a couple of different servings to it, it's like, okay, you're at the Golden Corral and you need to gorge yourself.
Hmm.
Well,
Interesting.
that's why I go to Golden Corral, but that's another issue. Well, let me ask
Well,
you
I'm
this.
right there with you.
Okay, I think I know what you're saying about the through line.
Okay.
So, are you saying that if this had actually been split into two albums, that lack of a through line wouldn't bother you?
Probably because it would have seemed like a shorter collection of just
Hmm.
random songs.
And I'm
Okay.
going to ask the follow-up question. You're saying that this album would benefit being split into two. Which tracks would you separate?
I hadn't gotten there. I mean, that's a really good question, and I did think about it. I just didn't take the time to say how would I split it. I don't know if it would just be as simple as, cutting it down the middle and putting half there and half. Um, we talked about the re-release that came out on None Such, where they added like five other songs that were recorded during the sessions but not put on the album. So there's a temptation to kind of figure out, well, what would the division be if you included those songs as well.
Hmm.
Lyle does play on one of those songs, and I think Toot Steelman is another one of those songs as well. um, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of take someone's artistic vision and say, man, I don't like it. But I don't like it as much as the other Pat Metheny albums. There's, a whole ton of them I love. There's this, and then there's Zero Tolerance for Silence and Sign of Four and things that I just can't stomach. So this is in
Okay.
that middle ground. Watercolors is in that middle ground too. For me, Letter from Home is in that middle ground.
Really?
So it's, yeah,
Good Lord, man. Okay.
I know. I just in
You're
in in
forgiven.
my in my humble opinion, Letter from Home is just derivative of Still Life Talking.
Ooh. Okay.
I know, fighting words.
All right. Let me get my bulletproof vest on to let that
No, it's
sink
it's just
in.
that's
And
how
then
that's how
get
it
on.
strikes me.
All right. Fair enough. My take.
Ken, Ken wants to say something else.
Sorry, Ken, would you like to chime in?
It-
My apologies.
Jim and I have talked about this before, but and this might be a topic for another video.
Go on.
Uh, um, Jim says basically, and excuse me, Jim, if I don't quote you exactly,
Verbatim.
No.
but he said it's too much of a good thing.
Yes. Uh-huh. Right.
I pose a question,
When
is
it
it
comes
even
to
possible?
music, I I, I can't relate to that,
Hmm.
you know. So like I said, maybe that's a philosophical topic we might want to cover in another video. The whole thing. Now, for an album to be too long, I get that, but that's
Hmm.
usually for albums that I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, it starts off fine, and 10 because we've talked about it before. Okay, this would be better if it were only 10 tracks.
Yep.
Um, but those usually aren't albums I absolutely love, um, or really like. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, Jim's other two examples with Tears for Fears and Led Zeppelin, I don't feel that way about, those two albums. I don't feel that way about Quadrophenia. Other long albums. If I love the album, yeah, bring me more. So,
Yeah, and it's
anyway,
not like
let us know.
I dislike
I know,
double albums,
I know,
you know,
I know.
so it there's I think it has to do with kind of uh cognitive overload, which is what I put Seeds of Love in. It's like so dense. There's so much information going on in there. It's hard for me to enjoy it all in one sitting. With Physical Graffiti and Secret Story, there's just too many stylistic leaps going on. But yet, like Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, I'm fine with that.
You see, I love the stylistic leaps
Hmm.
myself. And just to piggyback on the Seeds of Love comment, for me, what Seeds of Love is guilty of is top heavy, being top heavy. The first half of the album are all singles, basically. I mean, you have Women in Chains, fantastic track, Bad Man Song, which is like my version of going to church.
Yeah,
Hallelujah.
yeah.
Uh, the Seeds of Love, Sony Seeds of Love, and Advice for the Young at Heart. So you've got three singles on side one.
Yeah.
Side two took me a long time to get used to with
Hmm.
Seeds of Love. But I mean, that's just, again, everyone has an opinion. Uh, if I can chime in with my opinion on this
Yeah, go
album,
for it.
Hey, it's
Yeah.
your show.
and
That's, I
no, no,
know.
no, this is our show for, like, let's not even go there. Mike, I'm gonna pose a question to the panel. Can you have too much of a good thing? Don't answer now.
Okay. What is this, the McLaughlin group?
Can you have too much of a good thing? Now, I get what Jim is talking about in terms of there's a lot here, but I love what's here. I love what is here. This is Pat Metheny blasting open the doors and the windows and saying, have at it. Listen to all of this. This is what I'm going through. This is what I want to present to you musically. There's something here for everybody, is basically
Mhm.
what he's saying. To me, I've gone on record as saying, and I will quote this again. This is my favorite Pat Metheny album, hands down. Because, and I've said this to before in other episodes, to me, this is very much a summer album,
Mhm.
and I've also equated it to the uh, a day in the life of any individual, where you get up in the morning, you start your day, and track one, Above the Treetops, comes on, and you just start going about your day. You open up the windows. And the smells of summer come in, like, freshly cut lawns, and, a warm breeze that comes in and welcomes you to the start of the day, and you just, and to me, each song on the album, all 14, yes, all 14 are an adventure. You get in your car, you start your day, you go to work, and every song is like a different avenue you go down that day. A different experience that you're experiencing that day, and it's just a welcoming feeling to me when I hear this album. It is
Mhm.
beautifully melodic, wonderfully eclectic in its arrangement and presentation. I mean, the lead off track, Above the Treetops, 2 minutes and 43 seconds. But man, what a 2 minutes and 43 seconds. What an intro to this album. And according to the notes I've read, it's an adaptation of a Cambodian spiritual. So you hear the,
Mhm.
the local phrasings that come in. And you can just imagine, again, you're starting your day hearing this music coming through the trees, and that you're just just puttering around the house, getting ready to start your day, your work day, or whatever it is. You know, there are tracks on here like Facing West, the next track, where to me it's like a sense of wonder and possibility for you to start, like for your day, for your daily adventure. Uh, Nothing is repetitive to me on this album in terms of the musical expression that's on this album. Uh,
Hmm.
the use of sitar and it just on this one track is beautiful. I'm not going to go through all 14 tracks, but I do have notes for most of them. But Cathedral in the Suitcase, wonderful strings. It's a very symphonic album, a very dramatic, a lot of peaks and
Yeah.
valleys, right? It's just all encompassing and very emotional for me. That's why I love this album overall. It's nothing is impossible. It should have been, that should have been like a subtitle in brackets. Nothing is impossible. Because to me, that's what it represents.
Hmm.
Whatever trials that you're going through in your daily life, put this album on and it'll get you through. If you're open to it, gotta put that one in. If you're open to it, you'll get through it. It'll help you. Um, other songs in note, track 7, Rain River. In my notes have you very fluid arrangements. It has a sense of falling rain. And again, nice use of sitar on this. Track 8, you mentioned Always and Forever, not the Heat Wave song or Luther Vandross version, but an original composition. Beautifully done. Beautifully done. See the world, in my notes, I have a great tempo, sense of adventure, on this track. Um, Even, as a flower blossoms, I am running to you, you know, the duet, I guess, composition that he did with Akiko. Just to me, a beautiful piano interlude on this. There's something here on this album for everybody.
Hmm.
And this was him saying, "You think you know what I'm going to do? Here you go. Try this out. See if you like this." And you know what? I loved it. I loved it. To me, this album is a joy. And every time I listen to it, it brings back that sense of renewal and like the start of a day, like of a brand new day. Possibilities are endless. Whatever happened the day before is the day before. Every day, every start of a day is the start of a new possibility, a new adventure. And that's what this album represents to me. It might be a simplistic way to look at it, but this is the one album where I'm listening and I'm like, okay, nothing is impossible. Nothing is off limits to me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying because there is like almost no uncharted territory on this record.
Hmm.
So, in if this was Pat saying, just throw me a genre, throw me a set of arrangements, and let me show you what I can do. It's like, okay, you've proven your chops. I really didn't have to be shown that. Um, but it just kind of becomes to me more about look what I can do with all this as opposed to here's the cohesive narrative thing that I want to do with this arrangement or this band.
But you see, I don't hear that in this album. I don't
Hmm.
hear, look what I can do. I mean, you know, all due respect to Jeff Lynne, this is not Jeff Lynne showing that he can play, you know, 10 different instruments on re-recording Don't Bring Me Down, which he did in his documentary, which by the way I threw out because I got sick and that really pissed me off. But this is not again Jeff Lynne saying, "Look, I can play the drums. Look, I can play the bass." This is,
Oh, right.
you know,
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
get it.
okay, all right. That's just my take on it. I mean, I think this album is fan bloody tastic, and
And I get why it has such a strong appeal to people. And I guess I'm just in this set in my ways kind of set of, looking at it where it's like I just can't get through it because of, for me, there's these 2 dozen other Matheny albums that this one kind of bumps up against in terms of, I want to be as great as these. And it's like, nope, not gonna put you there.
So here's a question for you. Can you listen to an album with a clean slate mentally and not anticipate what's going to come next?
Uh, yeah.
Okay. Because from what I'm hearing about with the Pat Metheny with this album is like you were like, okay, you're listening to it and it's good, but you were expecting maybe, okay, I know what, something else is going to come up that, I might like, I'm expecting something that I'm used to from Pat and you didn't get it kind of thing. I'm
Well,
just,
so I'll throw an example out there which may get to
okay.
your point. So the most recent Pat Metheny album is called Moondial,
Yes.
which is all acoustic, him new arrangements of things on an acoustic guitar. The album just before that was again a Pat solo record, but it's like half
Dreambox.
electric. Yeah,
Dreambox.
Dreambox, half electric, half acoustic. More uh, overdubs and arrangements like that. My
Mhm.
expectation was that Moondial was going to be kind of more of the same, but my mind was blown when I really sat and listened to it because the depth of his playing and how he was attacking these tunes was just a lot more rich and a lot more textured than what was happening on Dreambox. And I think
Okay.
a lot of that has to do with the fact that he had, you know, uh, different type of strings on a different type of guitar with a different type of tuning. And frankly, it just blows my mind that someone can take a whole different way of tuning and playing and whatnot and be able to make beautiful music from it when he's used to playing something else for decades and decades and decades. But that's why Pat is a pro, and I would pick it up and I would make it sound like cats in heat. So you know I so I don't know if that answers your question, Armando, but yeah, I try to approach things with a bit of an open mind, kind of like the albums that we had been talking about with
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
Now Hear This series.
Okay. Yeah. I got you.
But
I understand.
sometimes when you've got an artist with a really deep bench, like a Pat or a Neil Young, or even like an Elton John, it's
Yeah.
hard to kind of approach it with complete
Yeah.
blank slate.
I got it. Yeah. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to,
Well, I
you
didn't
know,
mean to bloviate. I was just trying to answer the question.
and you did.
All right.
Like you did. No, it's fine. It's fine. Uh,
Jim, I think your take on this is very interesting. I really do. Um, and
Say
do tell.
well,
more.
one of the questions that comes to mind, okay, is the album Travels too long?
Nope. And but to me, the thing about Travels that makes that work is that it's Pat, Lyle, Steve, Danny Gottlieb, and Nana Vasconcelos. You've got that core five people. And yes, they go all over the map, but they don't go so far afield where, like what happens on Secret Story, you're not bringing in horn sections, you're not bringing in orchestra. You may bring in orchestrations and you may bring things that kind of emulate a horn sound, but there's a cohesion
Hmm.
to the songs that makes it work, even though back to back to back you've got Extradition, As Falls Wichita, Travels, Song for Bilbao. I mean, those are all vastly different tunes, but yet they're all in the same wheelhouse because you've got the same core people working it.
Not that Jim knows the album track listing for Travels, ladies and gentlemen, but he does. No, I get what you're saying. I get what
Lives
you're
rent
saying.
free in my
So
head.
even though the tracks were originally from separate albums, It's the makeup of the band that connects it for you.
Yes.
Okay.
And just, they are from different albums, and in the case of Extradition and Song for Bilbao, those were written and recorded on tour. So
Yeah.
it's not like they were pulled from back catalog albums and
Sure.
performed. Again, it's like here's this combo tackling this songbook, and it works.
Mhm.
Um, Another Pat album that is, it's got three people in it. It's the Day Trip Live EP
Mhm.
with Pat, Christian McBride, and Antonio Sanchez. You've got four songs. The first four songs on the are vastly different. The first song sounds like from a Sigur Rós album, maybe. The second sounds like it's a standard bop tune. The third is this, typical Pat, you know, acoustic ballad that just rings every, drop of melody that you can out of it. The fourth tune is kind of an, avant-garde blowout, but yet cohesively it all works together because it's this same trio of people, and there's just a similar language throughout the album. It's
Mhm.
kind of like, I don't know if this stretches the analogy too much. You got a painter, you've got one palette that he's working with, but he decides to take those colors that are on that palette and do five different paintings of vastly different styles. They still can all work as like a cohesive unit because it's the same general palette that you're working
Okay.
from. That's the thing that distinguishes it for me, like for liking Day Trip Live in Tokyo as opposed to, say, Secret Story.
Are you saying the weakness of Secret Story is its diversity of musicians, partially?
That's a good question.
I think the weakness for me is that the diversity of the musicians involved kind of dilutes what's going on in the songs. It
Okay.
becomes more about oh, look at all the colors I'm painting with, as opposed to the painting.
Huh. Okay.
And for me, what makes this album magical for me is the fact that he is presenting you a painting of endless possibilities.
Sure.
Yeah.
And every time you listen to it, for me, again, this is my very humble opinion, but for me, every time I listen to it, the painting is different.
Hmm.
It opens up different possibilities. So that's what I like about the album.
And I get that, and I I just don't see it the same way that you do. But
Yeah, and
you're not
that's
wrong.
fine. I mean, this is not, it's not like, okay, you're gonna be kicked out of the club because you don't like the album. You know what I mean? Like, um, yeah, you're safe. You're safe. But I just like what makes this album, and then we'll get on to the next album. What makes
Oh
this
my
album?
God, we got to talk about another one.
Yes,
Okay,
you knew that before you signed on for the
That's
mission.
right.
I did. I did.
So,
It's in the
what
contract.
Dang
again?
it.
But yes, what makes Secret Story great for me is it's eclecticism.
Hmm. And
And
and for me, Day Trip Live is great because of its eclecticism, but it works better because of the cohesion of the three pieces making it so.
I hear you. I hear you. Any closing comments, Ken, on Secret Story?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the next album we're going to be discussing is Dan Fogelberg Souvenirs. Now, this is an album that it's pretty much a new music discovery to me. It was recommended to me by Ken, and very interesting. It is Dan Fogelberg's second release, sophomore release. released in October of 1974 through Full Moon and Epic Records, produced by Joe Walsh. I believe you remember that name. Listed as soft rock and folk rock, has a playing time of 42 minutes and 57 seconds. And upon release, it reached number 17 in the Billboard, I believe it was Billboard 100 charts. There were two singles released from the album, Changing Horses and Part of the Plan. Part of the Plan does lead off the album. Now, in terms of who plays on this album, it's pretty much a who's who. Uh, you have Joe Walsh, who produced the album. He plays also multiple instruments on the album. You also have such guests as Don Henley, who plays drums on track number 4, and backing vocals on track 4, and also plays drums on track 10. You also have Glenn Fry or Glenn Frey, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Rest in peace, Glenn Fry, appearing on track 10. Now, before I give my 2 cents, or in some cases 5 cents, I'll pass the virtual mic over to Mr. Ken Cheshire, who did recommend this album, and he'll give us his view on said album. Take it away, Ken.
Thank you, boss. We don't want to forget you also have Graham Nash and Randy Meisner on vocals on this
That's
Oh,
album
right.
those
too.
hacks. Yeah.
Those
That's right.
hacks. 1974. To put this in a little bit of context, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, October 74.
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
1970, first of all, the Eagles, 7 months before this, released On the Border, which is my first Eagles album that I ever bought back then.
Hmm.
Then in December of the same year, Joe Walsh released So What, which is thought by some to be his best solo album, at least of the earlier works. So all that stuff within a very short amount of time for all these guys. I heard Part of the Plan on the radio. It grabbed my attention, and I went and bought the 45. So, and I wasn't a big 45 buyer back in the day, but it wasn't long after I bought the 45 that, it's like, okay, I got to get this album. This is um, that California mid 70s country rock, that the Eagles uh, pioneered along with Jackson Brown and a bunch of those others.
Yeah.
You can't mistake that sound. And
Hmm.
Walsh played on all but one of these tracks. Um, some are, I think, very more noticeable of his guitar work than others.
Hmm.
I thought he was excellent at adapting his own playing to Fogelberg's style, since Fogelberg wrote all the songs.
Hmm.
Was not a slouch at guitar playing himself. He's credited for playing guitar, organ, piano, vibraphone, the Moog synthesizer, the zither. For
Yeah.
those that don't know what a zither is, you don't need a shot to get rid of it. So
You need
uh,
three.
yeah,
Catch
and
the
yeah,
act at
and
9 o'clock tonight, guys. It gets a bit
that's
really
right.
on.
And the thing about it is, for me, listening to this album, um, it doesn't seem like it's as long as 43 minutes, because it's an album that once I get into, time just flies by,
Hmm.
which leads to the, when you're having fun, time flies. It just really does. It's got Fogelberg is known later on uh, for uh, his very lush voice, his incredibly emotional ballads and stuff like that. All of that's here. And even more so than on his first album, Home Free, I feel. I feel that this is an example of him getting um, more experience under his belt, um, and the fact that Joe Walsh was producing. I think it's a combination of all those things coming together and creating this. Um, I love I love the other Fogelberg album, but it could be simply I like this best. Probably there's a significant amount of love because it was my first, but it
Hmm.
still stands the time. It's also the 50th anniversary of this album. It's being reissued on vinyl, just as the original. There is a digital version that is also available. As far as I know, it's not available on um, CD. But the 50th anniversary digital version includes early demo tracks for three of the songs on the album, but it does have an extra unreleased track called I Know a Thief. And guess what? It's great. You know, it should have been included also. Um, the songs have all the staples, the great guitar work, the incredible vocal harmonies, and along with his lush voice doing the solo work. Um, most of these albums feel very personal. They are whether it's songs about betrayal. There's a lot of songs on here that I relate to more now because the songs of maybe, for want of a better term, regret. Looking back in the past and feeling a bit melancholy, or um, there's the title song has this one lyric that really gets me now, and it's when faced with the strong with excuse me when faced with the past, the strongest man cries. And I don't know a single one of my friends that are my age that don't feel that, that can't relate to that. And the fact that I forgot to look to see how old Fogelberg was when he wrote this, but incredibly insightful.
Hmm.
Um, so um, this is not just an album of shallow, um, stereotypical love songs, um, but they all really do seem to come from inside. And if it's not, and if these songs did not come from his personal experience, then it's incredible insight on probably what was to come in his very short lifetime. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts on this. It's just for this genre, I think it's just fantastic. That's
Hmm.
my recommendation.
Okay. Jim.
So there's really only two solid points of reference I had going into this album.
Okay.
One is Dan Fogelberg's Phoenix album, which came out from 1979, which kind of has, the blueprint of his compositional style, his harmonies, the way he approaches things melodically. So that was already kind of firmly in my head when approaching Souvenirs. The other point of reference that I had was Joe Walsh as a producer. And to me, the ultimate Joe Walsh as a producer song is Thunder Island, which was done by like Jay Ferguson, I think, in like 78. Outstanding track, but certainly very far away from the Dan Fogelberg aesthetic. So I
Hmm.
was very curious to see how the two would meet. And, this, except for like one track, I don't really find a lot of Joe Walsh isms in this record. It sure seemed like he subsumed himself to do everything that he could to sort of make Fogelberg sound blossom.
The way he wanted
And
to sound, yeah.
yeah. And so for those who aren't, familiar, just a couple of points of reference, I think about, I would liken Fogelberg's songwriting to um, James Taylor like melodic development with Jackson Brown lyrical overtones. So if I had to kind of say, hey,
Sure.
if you know James Taylor and Jackson Brown, you like the two of them, you probably ought to give Dan Fogelberg a try. And like Ken, you were pointing out, and like I said, with the harmonies for Phoenix, Fogelberg's harmonies on this album are dynamite.
Yep.
Oh man, there's just
Yeah,
some fantastic
they're
singing
on
going
point.
on in
They're
this.
on
Yeah,
point. Yeah. Yeah.
very on point. Um, this album overall is like really comfortable. I just really like the feel of it.
Hmm.
And songs like Part of the Plan, Changing Horses, Better Change, the title track Souvenirs, song from Half Mountain. To me, half this record is like a solid 9 or 10 out of 10 in terms
Hmm.
of the songs. And it's a very easy recommendation because of that. It's not like the other songs on here are like, 3 or 4. No, they're like, 6, 7, 8. It's really high quality stuff. Um, and if for some reason people are kind of bigoted towards Dan Fogelberg because of like Longer, the song that was from Phoenix, and maybe that's more like folks our age are kind of like, okay, yeah, drippy, schmarmy ballad, blah 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 blah. Leader of the band, okay, blah 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 blah. You put that stuff aside. I mean, the things that make those two songs great are, the melodic development, the performance, the sensitivity, the harmonization going on. They're great songs because they're just great songs, and a lot of that raw material is here on Souvenirs. I quite like this very much, and like I alluded to, this was my first experience with this record. I'd gladly listen to it again. I'm not like running towards it. It's not like my new favorite thing, but it's solid. It's really good.
Okay.
Jim, I have a question. You said there was only one song that the Joe Walsh sound um, came through. Which one was it? Do you remember?
I think it's Someone's Been Telling You
Yes.
Stories.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
track features Glenn Fry on backing vocals uh for the album. Yeah. Well,
Good
And I
choice.
should say there's a real nice ending guitar solo on the song as the Raven flies, but I didn't do the research to know if that's Walsh or if that's Fogelberg or Larry Carlton for all I know.
yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, this album, obviously I know of Dan Fogelberg, but I've not really ever dived into his music until I did an series of episodes with Bill Schuster, and tackling our favorite songs of the 70s and 80s. And he mentioned this album here,
Yep.
The Innocent Age, double CD from 1980, which I will be diving into and uh, possibly doing a discussion with Bill and whoever else wants to jump in on this. But getting back to Souvenirs, uh, this is the more I listen to this album, I've listened to it a couple of times, and the more I listen to it, the more I like it. The more I like it. I do like Dan Fogelberg's use of harmony on this album vocally. Fantastic, lush, rich vocal that he has, and especially when he double tracks himself
Yep.
on the background vocals. Uh,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It is fantastic. This is uh, folk rock, soft rock, dare I say, yacht rock, at its best. Don't you dare wag your finger at me. But
With his
hey,
finger.
I mean, yeah, this is the burgeoning, what I would say, of yacht rock because it is, it is, folk tinged acoustic music with the anchoring of beautifully crafted vocal harmonies and beautifully arranged songs. Just uh, very intricate and very, in terms of the subject matter, very introspective.
Yes,
Very
Well, yeah,
introspective.
one
very
of the things that
incredibly.
strikes me about Dan is that, he's like an old soul,
Yeah,
and this is his second album.
yeah,
He never really lived to be an old soul. Rest in peace. He
yeah.
died when he was 56 from pancreatic cancer,
From pancreatic
some
cancer. Yeah,
some kind of cancer. Yeah,
yeah,
poor
from
guy.
pancreatic cancer. And the songs are just dripping with reflection, like looking back on one's life and thinking, have I done what I'm supposed to be doing? Have I done all that I should have been doing? Could I have done it better? Even going forward, is there a different way to proceed with what I'm doing, to
Yeah.
make my life and to make the lives around me even richer or even better than what they are now. Um, but done cleverly. I mean, in terms of the arrangements, the melodic content on here is so strong. With one exception, I will never say that. I'll give you that one exception. Um, for me, um, well, no, you know what? Even the one song that I could say is an exception, "Morning Sky," track number 9. It might not, 2 minutes and 49 seconds. In my notes, I have here a good slab of bluegrass in
Yep.
terms of the arrangement. And, but even in that song, he's saying to his significant other, you tell me whether or not I'm in your life or I matter to you. Otherwise, I'm out the fucking door because I don't have any time for you screwing around with me, with my heart. So, you know what? I take that back. You know what? Track 1 to track 11 is fantastic. Uh,
Huzzah.
And the
and
amazing thing about that song is that subject wise, that is probably I don't want to say the darkest subject matter, but that is the ultimate breakup song on this album. And it's
yeah,
the most upbeat. You never heard a happier breakup song.
and another breakup song is "Same Old Lang Syne" from
Sure.
this album here, where it's he's talking "Same Old Lang Syne," just to sidetrack for a sec. Not that we sidetrack on these episodes at all, ladies and gentlemen, but
Never.
just a little sidetrack on "Same Old Lang Syne." It's about him and his ex-girlfriend that got back together again. They went out to one night to go talk. They're sitting in the parking lot in the car drinking, but they basically were trying to see whether or not they could rescue their relationship. And finally, they just ran out of things to talk about,
Yeah.
realizing there's no going back,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And it wasn't until after he passed away, and Bill has references as well, that his girlfriend admitted to the media or to people around that he was singing about her in that song, Same Old Lang Syne. That is emotionally devastating when you think
Sure.
about it. And
Sure.
a lot of these songs carry that same weight.
Mhm.
And this is only his sophomore release. I mean, my God, like the potency that is in this album is astounding.
It is.
It is astounding. And going into the production, I mean, produced by Joe Walsh. I mean, the one song I know of Joe Walsh solo is, Rocky Mountain Way. You know, it's nothing like that. I mean, he
No.
acquiesces greatly to Dan Fogelberg and says, okay, how can we make this better for you? How can we
Yeah.
arrange this album, these group of songs that will accentuate you and bring you out and bring you to the forefront? Never mind what I want as a producer or what I think. I will be acquiescing to you and I will be taking lead from you. And you tell me what you think that we need in order to to make this album your statement, and I will do my damnedest to make it happen. And he does.
Yes.
He does. And listening to this album has made me want to dive into, aside from the Innocent Age here, to dive into his other albums that he did in the 70s, you know?
Well, easy recommendation for Phoenix, and then also the album he did with Tim Weisberg, uh, Twin Sons of Different Mothers, right? Ken,
The
that's that
first one,
title.
yeah, that was the
Yeah.
first one, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, well, thank you for that. And I will definitely be looking into those albums. But yeah, my again, for me, my closing remarks on this album is give it a shot, listen to it. I think that like it will open your eyes and your ears to just a different perspective on things musically and lyrically. Um, there, and I should also know that there are songs here of I wouldn't say that they're gospel influenced, but there are messages of hope
Sure,
in these songs.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think personally for me, and this is just my opinion, but when you dive into uh, into the gospel field, you you do tend to sort of go along one road of songwriting in terms of the genre. This, when I say songs of hope, I'm just saying that, the lyrical content on these songs, or for me, is someone saying, look around you, look, reflect on your experiences, but look around you. You're still at a point in your life where you can make a change either for yourself or for others around you and go forward. But yeah, I mean, this album for me is simply fantastic.
For me, this
I
this album has one of the absolute strongest closing songs of any album I've ever heard.
There's
There's
a
a
place
place in
in
the
the
world for a
world for the
gambler.
gambler. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
track
it's
11.
uplifting, it's expansive, yet it's just a little, still a little bit haunting, though. Um,
Mhm.
real subtle build into, I guess what you'd call it a choir at the end. So this might be part of one of those gospel, influences that you talk about. It's full of hope, it's full of encouragement. And the last verse brings tears to my eyes. It says, there's a light in the depths of your darkness. Let it shine. I mean,
There is
the only
hope,
thing about
but
I wish that I could ask Fogelberg, because as uplifting as this is, they don't just fade out to end it. They temper back way really soft, and they end on a minor chord. I'm really curious if there was any meaning to that, any significance, or they just decide just to end it that way because it
Mhm.
seems almost, minor chords are, associated with not so happy stuff or sad or blah blah blah. I'm not sure. It's almost like he was predicting his uh the shortness of his life. You know,
That's interesting. Yeah.
he let it shine during his life in all of his recordings, only for that light to be snuffed out too soon. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean it is an uplifting song, but it's also the message of, there is time, I guess, to make a change if you take heed to to what's around you and be careful with how
Sure,
you proceed forward, right?
sure.
That's how I take it anyways from a novice's ear listening to this, but I think
The
it's
fact that no one is irredeemable,
exactly.
the
And
gambler, the whoever. Yeah,
exactly. And what's got me piqued too, my curiosity, my interest is listening to the albums that he recorded at Sunset Sound.
Mm, good point.
later on, like, uh, but that will come at a later time, obviously at some point. But yeah, no, again, I just think this is a fantastic album, and I think that for me it was a grower, like it grew on me as I was listening to it. I'm like, okay, I get it now. The more I've listened to it again, just two times, but what I've listened to, I get it. Like I'm listening to the harmonies are richer to me. The melodies are more crisp and clean. Uh, the arrangements are just simply fantastic, and there's an emotional depth to his vocals in terms of his harmonies. There, it's just like, my God, like it's just, he could have fit in with the Eagles no problem.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
In terms of the harmony delivery. No, it's like, oh my God, like
I
unreal.
would have I would have loved to hear him collaborate with Jackson Brown. That would have been amazing.
So
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. So,
Anyway, I'm glad y'all like it.
it's,
yeah.
thank you for recommending it. Thank you for recommending it. I think it's just fantastic. I think it is. I think it is fantastic. Um,
Jim.
it doesn't. There are albums out there that you listen to that don't need to hit you over the head per se in terms of the music that's on them, or like it doesn't have to have like thunderous
Sure.
drums or
Yeah,
arrangements or heavy guitars, or it can
yeah,
just it can
that's right.
it can be just what this is, just a beautiful, well-crafted folk rock, soft rock, dare I say, yacht rock album, and have it just be done beautifully.
So I'd like to know if you guys have had more time sitting with these two records than I have. Maybe. Um, I'd like to know, Armando, you said that before we transitioned and talk about souvenirs that we're talking like 180-degree difference. But yet somehow this episode, you've decided to pair these two together. And I'd like to know what connective tissue you see between these two albums to make them fit well within one Music Den episode, dear sir.
For me, it's about emotion, how they make you feel.
Okay,
Musical emotion. Thank
maybe
God.
there's your title.
There you go. There you go. Ken, is there anything that,
Uh,
because you were the one that recommended it to me, so
oh, I don't know. I mean, you showed me your new CD, and that reminded me and for some reason, and I don't believe in coincidences, I've been listening to Souvenirs
Lately,
quite a
yeah.
bit over the last, 2 weeks. I've been sending little links to to Jim and other friends and posting on X. Um, so I don't know. It's probably just Kismet
all right. All right.
as
Fair enough.
opposed to Zither. Yeah.
But Winky Dink.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. A very interesting episode on album discussions. Um, please let us know in the comments below your views on either of these albums or both of these albums, and maybe there's something that we're missing in our analysis of said
Yeah.
albums. Again, we are not music experts in any form, especially after this
No.
episode, any
Oh,
stretch of the imagination, and
ooh.
we can't even keep an internet connection going, apparently. So,
I welcome any commentary directed at me regarding Secret Story that starts with Jim, you ignorant slut. So
yeah, you just narrowly escaped that comment from me, but I won't even go. Yeah, just by a smidge. But there we go. So again, ladies and gentlemen, please put down in the comments below your views on these albums, and whether you know them or not, and or if this is as Dan Fogelberg was for me, a new music discovery, and give us your opinion on them. All right? There's no right or wrong answers, just opinions. So for Frickin' Frack, otherwise known as Jim and Ken. I'm Armando Venditti signing off for now. Please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content we got coming up. We've got more shows that we're going to be putting together very soon, and we will get them put together for you as soon as we possibly can. Please look after yourselves and one another, and we'll see you soon on the Music Den. Bye for now.